All right, so we got 3 different types of games about central domination. So we got Botvinnik, Larsen versus Geller, and Nimzovitsch versus Romy. That's from my system. Just looking under the section on dominating the center. Okay, and obviously you guys know Botvinnik, I guess, right? We did the class on him. Are you guys all? Most of you guys were there for that one, right?
Yes.
I wasn't, but I've read a bunch of his
Yeah, I think
games.
so.
Yeah, he's got a lot of great games. So, all right, let's check out Stolberg versus Botvinnik. I actually found this one from a puzzle in Chess Tactics for the Tournament Player. So I'm like, let me see where this came from, because he had such a dominant center. I'm like, this seems pretty cool. So I looked it up, and it's an amazing game. Okay, so we have Nimzo Indian, E3s. So this says normal line. Isn't it called, you guys know the name? It's Rubinstein, right? It's a Rubinstein variation, if I recall. So castle, so black is just playing it real solidly. And it's interesting because he doesn't really take over the center right away. I mean, he can't, right? White has more center. He just plays very solidly. And it's not even the kind of thing where you provoke him to push too much. That's another one. Hyper modern style, where you just let him take over everything. And then you kind of eat up their center and take it over yourself. It's just very much standard stuff. Ends up playing d5, which becomes like a Rogozin variation, right? We played d5 bishop before. It's very solid play. And this kind of more like positional variation where white just trades, slower type of game. And then Botvinnik, and we're looking out for Botvinnik, of course. See the one next to his name, how he wins. So c5, strikes in the center, and knight c6. So it's just normal way to treat the Nimzo. And the quick castling by black is nice. And going back to this, you don't really need to commit to anything, and you see rapid development by black, whereas white is generally behind in the kingside development. So black can strike quickly now. So he gets his d5 and c5 in, knight c6, a3. Now this is common where you don't take the knight yet, you take on d4. Pawn takes back, and then you bring your bishop to the center. So yeah, he can take on b4 too. b4, c3, and then there's a few, you could either play b5 or b takes c3. Then it gets a little messy, but it's a different kind of game. And then it looks like black's doing fine after a 95. Just good centralization. And there is a target, right? C3 can become a target. So kind of brittle structure. White does have a half open file, but this is fine for black. What's that, Uday?
So for
After
white, shouldn't we be
B5
concerned about?
C take B to just win.
Oh, Uday and Xander, what were you saying?
Oh, I was saying, so now we're in an isolated queen pawn position. So it seems like if Stolberg plays knight to d4 and blocks that pawn in, then we sort of have to start working around that. Like I'm trying to look for the open lines that are supposed to help us with this IQP.
Well, for black. Well, you'd have your typical E and C files, half open files, but there's a difference because the pawn is on C3. So we can have a clear, you can just play kind of positionally, just put some pressure on the queen side, long-term pressure on C3. And then of course you can always do stuff like 94, maybe stick your bishop on G4, but if nothing else, you can play on the C file. The only annoying thing, like I said, is there's a half open file for white. But yeah, it looks like pretty balanced. Actually, it got in these 5 games that Lichess has, you got 5 games, a win for each side, and 3 draws. So yeah, so pretty balanced. Computer says like 0.2. No, it's like basically even. Yeah, so equal chances. So that's how it can go also. But they just play
After B5.
takes pawn. Oh yeah, Uday.
Yeah, you said that he could play B5. Yeah,
Oh, right.
after
There's another. That's kind of interesting too, because you will see this stuff a lot in Nimzo. Just as a side note.
yeah.
So if the pawn takes and then D takes B3, and then he
B5.
doesn't take back and he tosses in B5
Yeah, can't you just take the pawn?
on B2.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, it's the kind of
wasn't
thing
that-
like it looks like you could try to. Let's see, what's our pawn count? Is black winning a pawn if they do that? Yeah, black is currently up a pawn, and if they trade there, yeah, but it's the kind of thing where I'm not sure if you want to win that pawn. Why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, his bishop
Nobody
gets,
did that. Everyone did 95, but why don't you really want to win that pawn?
his bishop gets very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And white has the bishop pair. Those are some monster bishops. And then then you move your knight. Well, you don't even have 95 anymore. I don't know. Knight
Knight
B4 doesn't look
B5.
that doesn't look sustainable to me. And that's where Xander, that's a nice situation to play against the Isolani. That's exactly what our opponent would want for white. Like they got this wedge in here, making it hard. Not a full wedge, but like that would be more like if it's on B6. But it is putting pressure on the half open file. Oops. Putting pressure, and you got the bishop pair looking in. Maybe the bishop just tucks back, like maybe bishop, yeah, probably just preserves the bishop. Like, okay, what's going to happen with your knight now? You got the dark squares, as you can see on both. Probably just leave it there, but you can bother the knight too. Can really put a lot of pressure on it in many ways. But yeah, that's bad because we have a weakness here, and now there's no weakness on c3. Well, white is down that pawn, but it doesn't matter because it wasn't. You'd rather almost have it like this than have to deal with it and be tied down to it. Does that make sense, Xander? As well as Uday, but that it kind of goes back to your question about the Isolani. So in the other one, the Isolani's better. I'm sure the computer really likes white here. It says plus 0.8, yeah. So more than enough compensation. That'd be like 1.8, right? Compensation plus and then some. But yeah, you don't want to deal with those bishops. So you're actually helping him gain a tempo to develop that bishop. When you capture, he captures back with a piece, you capture the pawn. You're wasting your time with that. So that's why. Oh, that's not the move that's played. Okay. That's not even the sideline, but yeah, you guys got it. So does that make sense? But it is interesting because that does come up a lot in Nimzos where the bishop's on b4, a3 is played, and you have these D and C pawns, kind of similar to what you see in a Tarrasch. Because in those Tarrasch situations, we have d5 and c5, and then white ends up taking on c5 and saddles black because he's already taken on d5, takes both, and black doesn't have the kind of thing where they can take back with the b pawn here to preserve, to have a hanging center. Instead, he has the Isolani, but that's not what happens in the game. Simply takes back. Stolberg just takes back. But you see, this is, and then he preserves the bishop. There's really no need now to take it on c3 because the knight will just take back. It's one thing, like I talked about earlier, where you see the pawn come to c3, we have a target. Like in the famous, you guys recall the famous Rubinstein game? It's called the backward pawn on chess games, where there's that backward c6 pawn. So yeah, first he plays against an Isolani. Then Rubinstein takes on c6, pawn takes back. So rather than hitting the Isolani, he hits the c6 pawn. So that's the equivalent, effectively the counterpart to attacking c3. So but there's no point now because he's not going to have to do that and fragment this pawn. Oh, funny enough, it's happened and white scores better. So this has happened before, but there's just no point. And so the knight would, oh wait, I don't think you want to mess with that. And bishop takes, opens up the king. Yeah, that looks very nice for white. So yeah. But you can see in the game, he just preserves the bishop. And we have this locked up center, a kind of semi-closed situation. But of course, we have plenty to work with here around the center, put pressure on each other's center. But like I said, it's pretty modest. So it's not like we're, black's going to dominate the center ultimately. But it begins just with this, we just have one pawn each locked up in the center, a lot of possibilities. But soon enough, we're going to demolish their center and completely take control. So it doesn't matter that it looks like, okay, nobody has anything now. He's actually going to do a sort of gambit, you might say, in terms of allowing white to get something over on the king side, like a different, not a pawn gambit, but like a gambit in the sense that you give your opponent a little attack, make them think they've got something, and then you end up dominating center. That's what it comes down to. But you'll see where he transitions because he values that center more than, you'll see. It might give you a hint, but I want you guys to find this moving a little bit. So b4, rook e8, take the file, why not? And as for b4, he's going for a queenside play. I'm not sure if that's warranted or I don't know. Bishop e2 doesn't do much. It's blocked, bad bishop, gonna be blocked by the d4 pawn. So he's going for queenside play, sensible, but it's probably not the right approach. Why do you guys think this is actually part of what allows black to start to dominate? What is potential? What's a con of this move anyways? Pro gains space, can attack, go for that, wing attack. Queenside attack. What's the con of b4, the main one?
The hole on c4, but he needs to be able to get to it.
Hole on which square? c4?
c4.
Exactly. So for example, let's say b5, I think it actually does end up doing that. If b5 is played, knight just comes to a5 and you have a rook coming again. So we're going to hit that c file hard, and the knight would love to hop into c4, make the bishop give itself up. Just like how, if white has the b2 bishop, that's nice. If black has the uncontested light square bishop, that could be very strong here. Actually, if you look at the game, we can check it out later. But if you look at the Tata Steel games, there's an interesting That's the game between Van Forest and Geary. I don't know if you guys were watching, but Van Forest may have given up his advantage, but he sacked in exchange for a pawn just to get that bishop on the diagonal, to get those better bishops. It's interesting. So rook e8, queen b3, bishop to e6. So you just kind of, it's very modest, right? Black isn't doing anything yet, just hanging on to his center, developing. Bishop d2, queen d7, f4. So you can see though, it is an example of arguably overextension, right? White's pushing a lot. Well, they're pushing so many pawns on dark squares, which naturally means what? What's the consequence of that? Going back to your knight c4 idea, Xander.
Yeah,
His
more
knight
holes,
falls
but all.
weak and his knight's good, bishop is good.
And Uday, you said what's weak? Yeah, holes, Uday. What were you saying?
Yeah, light
Yeah,
squares
it's
are weak.
Yeah, the white squares are just weak. Yeah. The bishop's good for now, but we're going to deal with that. Yeah, these particularly, two center, you might say a little off center, but the light squares are very weak. Pawn on d5 latches onto e4. We just need to get there with our pieces. Yeah, sure, white has a bishop and a knight covering now, but we can deal with that. c4 is slightly off the center, but that's highly relevant here. The c file play, this e4, maybe we can put pressure on the pawns, especially the d4 pawn. So that's all. And the other thing is you can often hit the b pawn with a5. You don't need to give him the square yet, but it's just a possibility to putting pressure on the queen side when we're ready. Right now, that's where white's play is. But again, white really doesn't want to keep going there with b5 yet because now a5 to c4. Now with tempo on the queen. So yeah, light squares. Now, what do we do about this? He has played f4 though. So there's a dynamic idea, of course, which is to play f5 and win our bishop. But it's just annoying. So naturally, what do we do about that?
Bishop f5.
Exactly. Just go bishop f5. That's our bad bishop anyhow, right? Blocked by our central pawn. So we just go bishop f5. Attack the bishop. He doesn't have time to take the d pawn or something. He has to deal with this. But if he takes, the queen comes in. And also he has to worry about this interdependence of the knights. So it's a little clogged up here for white. But particularly those light squares, we already have the rook on the open file. The E file, we can quickly come to the C file. So you're starting to see black is getting some edge. You have to obviously, you never know. There might be something here, but it's kind of like white's not sure what to do. They're like, oh, maybe I'll do something on the queen side with b4. It's like, oh, let's throw the f pawn at them. And they don't have clear direction. And now they're just getting a bunch of holes in their position. And black is beginning to latch onto those, trade off that light squared bishop. Then white's saddled with the bad bishop, blocked by all its pawns, a lot of its pawns. c2, forcing the issue. Now, this is a nice move. So a natural move a lot of people would do would be, of course, to take the bishop, just trade it. But this is a nicer move. What does he do? More
Rook
direct.
c8.
Rook C. Oh, first he's got to react tactically, though.
Oh yeah, whoops.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Right, but then we don't want him to take that. Would be bad, right?
No.
But before that, no, in general, sure. Strategically, yes. But tactically, we got to deal with this. But then he deals with it tactically, but it is strategic in terms of his central control. What can we do about this push? I don't think we want G6 here. I mean, sometimes you do that. You will do that sometimes to latch on, but that's kind of, unnecessary here to fragment so much. But we do that sometimes, especially like an E pawn taking and keep your pawns together, but to guard there. But we do want to really latch on to those light squares. So how are we going to do that?
Can I try?
Uday?
Bishop e4.
Yeah, exactly. So what else can you do, right? I mean, either what are your candidate moves? You might have like something like 97. Not sure that you need that right now, but you might try to route in with your knight, for example, to come to f5 after a trade. That's a candidate move. Bishop takes is a candidate move. It's just not doing much for you. I just don't see what it does. And bishop e4, well, you're grabbing the center. You're going to occupy that one way or another. You're trying to occupy e4. So it's bishop e4. Yeah, so just very direct. Take the center. You're the first one to have a piece straight, just directly in the center. So keep in mind, look at these 4 central squares. Those are all going to be highly relevant, and c4. So it's kind of, you can say, I don't know, peripheral to the center. Still these are all important. I think I've heard something described. Have you guys heard that? Something about like kind of, I forget the name for it, but someone talked about the squares that are, in the proximity of the center, which are obviously, it's not like you have to be orthodox and say, oh, all you want is those 4 squares. I mean, obviously c4 is very central. And if you have a knight there, it's aiming straight into your opponent's center and deeper. Right, very annoying if you get a knight there, any one of these squares really. So we have b5 is played. So he does actually grab the bishop here. Interestingly. What's that? He does actually grab
What
the
do you say about the knight in the center?
knight. I was breaking up a little bit. The knight where?
You were saying something about the knight in the center.
Yeah, A5, C4, right?
Right, exactly. Although we're gonna time it out differently. We'll see what the difference is. But then, oh, I was saying, Uday, I was saying that even though it's like C4, so C4 is going to be relevant, of course. And you might say, oh, that's not the center. So what I'm getting at is like, yes, we have the 4 central squares that we want to dominate, and not just, you know, get a good chunk of it, like the lion's share. No, we're literally going to dominate the whole thing. And you're going to see, again, there's a kind of a, you might call it a gambit in terms, it doesn't have to be like a pawn gambit, but in terms of giving your opponent a little something, throw him a bone in terms of, you'll see over here. But it's because he understands the importance of the center. But even here, like for example, you know, F5, F4, C5, C4, those are all peripheral to the center, and those all give you access through the center and beyond. Does that make sense?
Yes.
No, and now as for how he handles this, so
I
Andrew,
mean, yeah,
yes,
they're not exactly central squares, but they definitely have a lot of central influence.
yeah, that's what I'm saying exactly. So like, you know, because it's about controlling the center. Well, it's kind of pretty much the center in C4, from what I recall. It's all around there, but it's just a nice little extension on the center. But yeah, he certainly will be going for the main central squares too. But that leads to the beautiful tactic that I found, well, that I saw in Chess Tactics for the Tournament Player, which is how I found this game. Because sometimes you're like, let me just look that game up. I did the same thing for a Capablanca game that's in the book, where in the clearance section, where the king is on, the white king's on D3, and there are like rooks and pawns surrounding it, like rook on C4, and it's pretty cool. Or the king is on, king is on D3, there are rooks surrounding it. It's a really cool one. So I looked up the whole game. It's like, how does he get that, right? It's just as important. So how does Botvinnik get this amazing attack leading to the tactic that you'll see at the end? So bishop takes first, actually, before knight A5. And again, there's some positional ideas, of course, of getting here, but tactical reasons for this. Why would you not play knight A5 right now? Can you guys find that?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'll let the others.
Uday saw it? It's not, it's getting staticky. You can write it down if you see the move.
Could it be if you take the, okay, so if you went to, what is that, A5 with the knight, then their knight can take your bishop. So that's one piece. And the knight would also, and then the bishop would be attacking the knight on the 5.
Right. The knight's too loose, and we're gonna have discoveries. Oh, and Xander, I saw you said knight takes D5. So John, you said knight takes E4. Xander, knight
Yeah.
takes D5. Something along those lines. Now the question is, what's the proper move order? Which one do we take? Do you snatch this first and then take something? Probably all of it's pretty good. Knight A5. I think the only thing I'm thinking about is that when you take this way, the pawn takes back. It's kind of a little bit of a splinter there, right?
Yeah.
Possibly a glitch in that line, because now you have to deal with the bishop. Probably, yeah. So probably not that move order, maybe. But I would consider that for sure. I would consider Xander's move. I would consider taking first, although, again, the pawn takes back. Interestingly, no, it doesn't work, because when the rook takes, the knight on E2 is hanging. See that? Oh, no, it's not. It's not. What's going on here? Equal pieces. Did white just
Yep. Just cover defense.
on a pawn, right? Oh, you can grab the B5 pawn, but I don't know. That's kind of messy. But we want to get our knight on C4. We don't need this. Like, that's what your opponent wants. If your opponent's going to get squeezed like that, they want this kind of counterplay that you're providing to them, right? So now let's go to Xander's move. This might be the cleanest. Well, the point is, you know, we don't need all of that, right? That's why I don't play 95. But maybe even this one. Let's take a look at that. Knight takes. They want to take with check and damage your structures. You can't really ignore that. We're going to take it with something. Let's say the bishop. Well, we can't really take. You have to worry about the bishop being loose. Yeah, but again, if you do this, they're going to take with check, and that looks pretty ugly. Yeah, white is currently up a pawn. The knight's hanging, and it's damaged. Yeah, white's probably just winning, destroyed king side and everything. So yeah, we would take the knight, the bishop. And then they're gonna take here. And white's up a pawn again. Yeah, so not good, right? I think that's the line. You can verify with computer. I think you're right, Tanner. Oh wait, no, actually, knight takes c4 does work. It does work.
Hey, go
There must
back
be a
a second,
glitch
go back a second.
here.
Hey, listen.
What's that?
No, see, I was saying, well, I mean, it doesn't work. It shows -0.8. No, I meant
Yeah, we have
knight
to find out.
takes.
There's a glitch somewhere. Yeah, there's a glitch in there somewhere.
Yeah,
What's that?
I meant knight takes d5. Yeah, just play the moves for a sec.
Yeah, this is the
maybe
line,
we'll-
right? That's the line that we thought might the line that we thought might be good for white, but there's a glitch
No,
somewhere. Let's see.
knight takes
We were yeah, this is
d5.
right. We were looking at bishop takes. You want to do knight takes and hang the bishop?
No, yeah, here I think you and bishop takes d3.
Right, that's the line we're looking at, but there's a glitch somewhere that's not good, because at first it looked like, oh, it's good for white, a brief analysis, but there's actually some, we have to find out.
Yeah, I think I
Why is
got
it-
it.
why is it that black
I
is
think I
winning?
got it.
What's that?
I think I got it. Switch off the engine. Switch off the engine.
Yeah, we just know it's winning, but I took off the moves. Okay,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Play bishop takes d3 instead of bishop takes d4.
you want to take this? Okay, knight's gonna take
Yeah.
f6. I'm not sure about this one. I think this might, oh, you're gonna find out. I think this is winning for white. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
missing something.
I've got an idea. Just take. Yeah. Take. Queen takes. Knight b3.
Okay. They could move and ignore it, just, or they could maybe even take and I imagine they would just move the rook, let's say, for example, rook here to e1.
Yeah. Then
Remember,
you
white
take and you get
still
the
has a
pawn.
lot of static advantages here.
Yeah, but then you take and you get the b4, b5. So I think rook b1 is better.
Maybe.
Either way,
Yeah, I see
either
what-
way you're winning.
Right. But even this is probably very good for white. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So white's up, but even this, for example, even this is.
Yeah, I mean,
because look at the strike. You don't. Yeah, you definitely don't want that.
Yeah.
one. But yeah, maybe you're right. So I just gave an example, sample line. Maybe you're right. Let's say they do this, and that's even.
Yeah,
That's even
no.
better.
Now you take bishop,
And
bishop
black
takes
doesn't. It's
a3.
just bad. Oh, now you take.
Bishop takes a3.
Sure.
Yeah.
They could take this one. Now.
So I
But
think
even
the
here,
way
no,
to save both.
I don't think you want this. You do not want.
Yeah,
this.
actually, I think the way to save both pawns is by going rook.
Saying white's up like a point, but yeah, it doesn't. But that's kind of distraction from what matters in a way, because and that's why it's saying the bishop should, as we were looking at this line. But the interesting thing is we're going to find out, because we missed something in the analysis, because it looks like, again, this is what we analyzed. We were here, and then there's rook e3, but it looks like wait, we both have 3 minor pieces. White's up a pawn, but white's the problem is, again, white's very weak though. But it's still, it doesn't look like it's that bad for white. At least it seems like, hey, we don't need to give them this, which is why he took on d3 first, just because he had better than this. You know what I mean? Again,
That's probably
to the human eye, to the human eye, it looks like it's not decisive for black. To the computer, it says black is winning. But why is black winning? Is it just because of all the
I
weaknesses?
think the idea is rook c8 on the next move.
It prefers
On the
this,
next move.
but yeah, let's say here, for example, it's not decisive. Again, the
I
computer
meant on
likes-
the next move.
it's not
I
decisive.
meant on the
but
next.
it's nice for black. Yeah. So first here, and then here.
I meant rook. Yeah, rook there. Yeah.
Okay, it's saying here, and now rook c8. It's very good. Wait a second. They have nothing better? Interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking they'd go bishop d2 instead of knight c3.
Yeah, it actually
So
prefers
yeah,
it.
that's the first move that came to my mind.
It's very
Okay,
it's very messy. It's very messy, but
Oh
still.
wow.
Oh,
Wow,
yeah, that's a nice
like-
stack.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
very messy, but again,
That-
this is good
I
too. This is
missed
very strong
that.
position, but
I missed that.
for a human though, it's for a human, when you look at this position, it's yeah, I have a nice position. I have plenty of you're down a pawn, you have 6 for 5, you have such a nice piece placement, plenty of competition. But even here, if you look, okay, you have to look at this several moves ahead. And it's yeah, it's nice, but he didn't, it's I don't need that. I just have a nice, I have an even nice, not nicer, I don't know, but I have a very comfortable situation. where I can land my knight on c4. And even here, like even when you look at it now, it's like, yeah, the computer thinks black's winning, but it's still a little murky, you know what I mean? It's not over yet. A lot of play left, don't you think? But certainly it favors black, yeah. But let's compare that. But that's
I mean,
interesting.
but like,
That-
what are
that's
the
interesting,
odds that,
Huh?
what are the chances that a human player like below 25,600 would find rook e3?
Yeah, even if you look at the position in front of you, it's not like immediately decisive. You know what I mean? So maybe he saw it, maybe not. Interestingly, Botvinnik, we've talked about, I think, that he claimed he wasn't great, maybe modestly, but he said, I'm not the greatest attacker. He says a lot of times you just need to look 2 moves ahead. So yeah, he was more about understanding, deep understanding the position. But maybe he didn't see it, or maybe it's like, but again, even if you see it, it's a little murky. But what happened is he decided, he just keeps it simple. Let's just take here, then let's come over to a5. Well, actually, does he still have something here? No, maybe it's not totally different. What? Let's see. The computer's saying, yeah, it's still not suggesting, it's still thinking that black is better. Well, no, we looked at lines where you take, for example, but it's still saying that it's winning, takes. And then there's your rook e3 again, interestingly. I mean, but again, it's a very messy situation. Either way, it's messy. Now it says -6, even more than the previous line. But for a human, even here, like obviously black's really good, but do you guys think if you had this position where you'd be like, oh yeah, black's winning, black's -6? I don't think we see it the same way as the computer, do we?
I mean,
It's
we'd
like,
have
but
to
black has
calculate
really nice pieces.
because
Black has pieces and a weak white king. What's that? So
like obviously, I mean, if I just look at the position, I like on instinct, I'd prefer to be black. Like,
exactly. To me, it's like minus over plus kind of thing. It's like nice advantage. Well, look at that. I mean, beautifully placed piece, but it's the kind of thing like in a human game.
yeah,
Because what's
like,
gonna happen,
I
like
think-
maybe white gets some counterplay, like boots the rook back or something like that. But
yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I think if you give me like 10 or
like-
15 minutes to actually think about it, then yeah, definitely.
yeah, exactly. That's why it's pretty tricky. It's pretty tricky because you would need a lot of time to figure. But of course, I like this with black. Of course, I do. But it's interesting. So he did have that in both cases. There was an opportunity to take on d5. So he just preferred to take on d3 first, which is actually no. He calculated correctly according to Stockfish. It is actually apparently the best move. So if bishop takes d3, then we have this line. Something -1.6, just for what it's worth. It does prefer this line. Oh, because of this one. Oh, right. We looked at that, right? Isn't this one where it got pretty messy? I don't know. See, this is a total computer move, a6. What is it? Right.
Yeah,
No,
what
it's
the
not the move you did. Yeah, of course you take them. Anyway, it's an interesting scenario, but no matter what, we have to, we have so much, we're actually down,
Value.
we have so much compensation. Yeah, maybe now a6, but we have so much compensation for the pawn. Anyway, that's what could have happened. So it's either, again, the positional thing is we just land a knight on c4, we go like rook c8, just get a grip on this position, which ends up leading to, it got tactical though, like I said over here. But the positional thing is we just dominate center. But hey, no, our opponent does have we just didn't have the chance to like, b5 happened. And it's like, sure, I would like to maybe anchor my knight to not give him these things, but it ends up working out for me. I just don't have time to go like something like b6 and I don't have time for that, right? So you just roll with it. But it ends up, like I said, in general, b5 is very weakening. And like you said, Uday, there are lines where a3 gets picked up, b5 gets picked up. Again, it's all very complicated, like unclear positions that favor black overall. But yeah, it's really interesting. So it just happened that this was the best for him in this position, right? And the computer verifies it, but we just understand for the most part. Pretty tricky position. But this is what you gotta do though, if you're trying to play for something. And he does not, Stolberg sees that. But then now you have what you want. Right, now you got that beautiful knight in there. We're still looking at e4, got the light squared grip. Imagine, okay, compare our light squared grip to white's dark squared grip, because we're both, we're kind of playing on the counterpart squares. So clearly we have more going on than they do. And it's the kind of typical thing where you look at the counterparts e5, e4, you look at both. See, the difference is we have the ability to kick a piece out of both of those squares. They don't with a pawn. So permanently weakened squares, theoretically, right? There's no back. You can't move those pawns back. You can't take those pawn moves back. Whereas for black, if you need to, well, there's no knight coming in anyway. But theoretically, like, I don't know, he has to find some really complicated maneuver to reach e5. By that point, we're going to be crushing him on the e file probably, or the c file. But even if he did get there, you have f6 available if you need maybe to stop it preemptively. And if you got in here, first of all, you have a lot of pressure on c5. But if you needed to, you can go b6. But in the meantime, you're going to pick off the b pawn or something. So it's like, white has a lot of problems, and it's just interesting to check. Computer analysis, still big advantage for black, minus 1.7, because it didn't like going for the other line anyhow. But if you go for this line with white, it's still similarly bad. But again, this is a situation that Botvinnik like is a pretty positional player, meaning a positional player would generally like something a little more fixed rather than the mayhem that would result in the other line. So you just sort of fix it in place, which is interesting what Stolberg chose to do with the capture earlier rather than keeping tension in the center. So you have this fixed situation, you have a nice knight, just play on the squares, grind your opponent down. Okay, so does everyone understand so far how we've begun to acquire our advantage? But now we're going to really dominate the center in the next several moves. But just to be
Can you go remove that?
beginning our
Just
operation,
refresh
you guys
it. Can
understand
go,
that?
like, remove-
What's that?
Can you go like just play through again from the bishop takes path?
Yeah. Since we
Like
looked at two sidelines, let's look at the flow of what happened. So very innocent, innocuous situation, unassuming, nothing happens. And then F4, that's probably a sort of a game changer in a way. It's just a bad move, because he doesn't get F5. And besides, like I said, what I was getting at is that he's jockeying between two sides, not like Capablanca, very sophisticated style. It's like, I'm going to throw this in at B4, maybe do something here. It's like maybe B5, which is bad. And then I'm going to go F4 to F5. Well, you don't get F5 in, and that's bad too. Both of which weaken the square. So like that, those are the moves that lose essentially for Stolberg. Those because they give Botvinnik a massive advantage, and he squeezes him in out of that. So yeah, bishop F5, queen back.
yeah, I was saying
Take.
here.
Yeah, of course you have to look at briefly at if they take the knight on C6. Is that what you mentioned? Is that what you're thinking about?
No, like that's another thing.
You have to look at that.
Here,
maybe.
I
So
think
that's
it
probably-
just take the queen. Yeah, knight takes.
Oh no, you could actually take because they can't take here. Yeah, and then now we're the one is up a pawn, and we have the bishop.
Yeah,
That's
no,
that's
actually,
what's the line? But that's interesting. I was going to note that too. What's the line that you're looking at? So a lot of tactics here in the center. So you got to be, in order to dominate the center, though, you got to be willing to roll with those tactics as you're going, and you have to be willing to see like how is the center going to be shaped. Different pawn,
like
different.
I was talking about this line. Bishop F5 after bishop F5 instead of queen C2. If bishop takes.
Okay, and then our queen
takes
occupies. Okay,
G4.
and then what? Then
G4.
G4. What about queen here? That looks kind of nasty. Oh, that's a full.
Yeah, but I mean, like rook D1, rook A D1.
Okay, what is black going to do after that? Can you see?
Oh, sorry, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah, position's collapsing. That's just collapsing.
No, my bad. What about king G2?
Here, after this,
Yeah, no,
it's
no,
a
no.
fork. It's a fork. You have to deal with the bishop. Yeah, that's losing.
Yeah, I missed that. I missed
No,
that.
now white is just too porous.
Yeah,
And
think-
that's the
yeah,
thing, like I
yeah.
was getting at, is that he's kind of playing arbitrarily. He's like,
Yeah.
maybe go here, maybe we'll go here. What I was getting at is
I
no,
missed that.
not
Yeah,
prepared
like-
for kings. Once you blockade, white does not have the grounds for a kingside attack. Like his pieces are not coordinated. Black has the counter attack. He has the diagonal. He has the E4 square. He has all this stuff, the central play. And as we're going to see, you begin your central domination, which pretty much renders moot anything that white can attempt on the king side. Not only that, actually exploit it like immediately in a situation like this, as you can see. Maybe rook up first, okay? If you want to, you can play H5, no more G4 for him. Maybe you can squeeze in with H5, H4, your knight's gonna come in, you can double your rooks calmly. You see what I mean? Positional domination.
I missed queen D3. Like I was thinking more queen E6 and then F5 and then you win the.
You were thinking what move? Queen back? Yeah, exactly. So tactically, that's the problem. Tactically, the stuff is pretty much all failing for white. Now, notice also, in addition to the weaknesses, black just has really nice piece coordination. We have a better bishop, and our bishop's nice. We have the knights aiming at D4. The other knight can come into E4. We have a rook on the E file, queen on the diagonal, hitting a bunch of weaknesses. So you can see, and again, the computer's like probably like -8 or something. Yeah, literally -8. But you get a sense for how the computer begins to evaluate these things.
Yeah,
so it's completely dumb.
I missed queen D3. I was thinking more queen E6 and F5 and then white wins the D5.
Yeah, okay. And then wins the pawn. Yeah, even there though, remember in the previous line where black sacks and it doesn't even matter. No, they can't win it, Uday, because the E2 knight's so weak. Can't even win it if they wanted to. You could just move you don't even have to go queen E7. Let's just say you went Probably I would. No, the rook's gonna come. I might just go, oops, I would probably just go here. And black is very nice position.
Yeah.
It's just too, again, like, yes, white could, now I would advocate for this kind of thing in many situations. Like there's a cool English line like that, where the bishop comes out and then you go h3, g4, you start kind of trying to squash the bishop on g6. But white is very prepared in that position. Black's pieces aren't developed. White has like very comfortable center. But here, it's just not justified for those reasons. Does that make sense? Black is exactly where they want to be. And that central play is going to lead directly. Well, e-file is a lot too, e-file and d4, but that's going to lead to the king in many cases. That makes sense?
Yeah.
You don't even need h5, but stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too much. And again, evaluation. Well, in this case, this wasn't as bad as the other line, but it's still saying like -2. It's just white doesn't have anything. They don't have any real attack. Again, if you have like, maybe if the queen decided to be somewhere else and there were rooks over here, maybe you can go for g5, a bayonet attack, but it's just not there, right? It's too weakening. It's a simple situation where it backfires, like in my game against my student last week, where he ended up winning 2 pawns out of it. He was up a pawn, he got it from my attack, my gambit, he won another pawn. Anyway, but then unfortunately I survived. Okay, so b5, bishop takes, so here we are. Okay, and now we're again, there's your rook ac8. Now it happens, and black is beautifully placed. Do you guys sense that? It's a feeling. It's the kind of thing where it's intuitive. It's just a feeling, like everything is where it needs to be. White's pieces are not. The bishop's retreated. The rooks aren't connected. He has to worry about some of his queenside pawns. Obviously, his d4 pawn, maybe even his f4 pawn, because you have to watch out if you play f5. G3 is guarded by the queen, but G3 gets a little loose. So the knights are both tactical. We would call these tactical weaknesses. There are permanent weaknesses in squares, like the light squares, B3, right? Well, everything on the third rank is very weak because white is pushed so much. This diagonals problem, right? If we get to take the pawn. So there's a lot of tactical weaknesses, and we already have pieces X rank, like a rook X rank at C3, bishop X rank at G3, knight ready to come in. Too much stuff going on. So those are tactical weaknesses, and we have the coordination, so we're ready to quickly exploit some of these things, whether, especially if white missteps here. Does that make sense to everyone where we are now? How we had a positional advantage building. We had to deal with maybe a little skirmish, potential skirmishes and tactics. Didn't need to come to pass, but those possibilities were embedded in the lines. That some of those lines, like knight a5 and knight takes d5, as Sander mentioned and John mentioned, there's discoveries and stuff. So everyone on the same page now, so we can build from here.
Yep.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay. So now he's trying. That could be kind of a suave idea sometimes. Like sometimes black will do that. Like it looks weird, and then they go rook a7 to Magnus has done a cool thing like that against Kramnik. Could do a little rook lift, awkward looking rook lift, but hey, it makes sense because your rooks aren't connected. Now again, you might have to worry about your bishop though. Then you have problems. The bishop never developed, undeveloped. Now we have this pressure. If the rook gets traded off on f1 or whatever, there could be problems with bishop on c1. So you start to sense these problems. It's funny. This bishop's going to maneuver a lot. Bishop goes to f8, a4. Okay,
That's really nice.
he's really committing himself to the queen side. What's that?
Does it by any chance go to g7?
No, it doesn't go. I don't think it go. Oh, there's actually a possibility. I don't think it does, but it's going to hop all over. It's going to slide over to b4.
It could
back,
attack the pawn.
back and forth. What's that?
It could attack the pawn.
From g7?
Yeah, maybe something like, like, I mean, this is just a scheme, an idea. Bishop f8, g6, bishop g7, knight d6, knight de4, takes, and if you want to, then rook c4.
Right. If we're really going to fixate, well, the thing is, yeah, possibly, yes. It'll take some time, of course. And then he'll probably batter us with f5, right? That's the thing. So tactically, we'll probably get hit by that. But the thing is, in this kind of position, given that we're so mobilized, I mean, I understand what you're saying theoretically, right? But hypothetically doing that. But given that we're so mobilized, we'll be able to get through in some way. And before he consolidates, because he's beginning some consolidation here, attempting. Does that make sense? But I see what you mean.
Yeah, but like, to be sure of that, we need to calculate something.
Right. It'll take us a long time though. And in the meantime, well, maybe actually, to your point, maybe bishop a5 to b6. That's an easier way, right? That might happen. That's very realistic, actually. That'll take us 2 moves. We could do that. But again,
Yeah.
we're seeing the problems on the knight. We're already starting to see problems with the bishop and the rook if we move the knight somewhere. Maybe your idea. You know, a lot of ideas here. So
So
you
like
move,
what made him come up with like this bishop move? Like I mean like here, I don't know, like is he like preemptively like just moving it like why did he decide to go there? Like
oh, he went back, but then, to get out of the way. But then, oh, yeah, I mean, that one's a little cryptic, but maybe knight t6, right? But then
okay,
after a4, that's what changed things.
got it.
A4 has just been played, so he gains access. And then Uday, yeah, and Uday, to your idea of attacking d4. Now he actually does have ideas. So this will freak out Stolberg a little bit, right?
Mm.
A lot of danger, but that's just crazy. This is more practical in this game, right? That you would do that, but you don't even need that. You may not even need that. But yeah, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind that. Getting through the e4 square. But funny enough, as you're going to see, this bishop does a lot of stuff because you were just thinking that Uday, right? How do I work with this bishop? Okay, here. Well, now that so he's worried about this tactically, he retreats his knight, but now we get more control. So we're beginning. We're going to get much more than this, but now you see we're already in the last few moves. We come in with the knight. Our bishop's bothering him, aiming to his back rank. Well, now we're dominating the e file. We already were, but now he doesn't have a rook e1. And then we have knight e4, and there's not even like bishop d2 because the knight covers d2 as well. So you can't challenge the bishop on d4. Let's see what he does as well, though. So he takes, but now he comes back to d6 because now it's with the temple and the queen. Well, now he might have some mating ideas that really bother him here. Not yet, but let's see. So he chases the queen away. Then he goes to e7. Okay, there you go, Uday. Again, there are easy. I see what you see. It doesn't matter how he does it as long as he aims at d4. So your way was just going to be more cumbersome, but this is the idea now, right, Uday? You see that? Same concept, but no g6 needed, which would weaken h6 and allow for, well, f5 has been played, but again, like if it hadn't been played, he would still have the f5 idea, but now it's there already. So it's like, well, this is just complete. Does that make sense, Uday? Now it's there. Yeah, to your he's muted. I don't know, but yeah. So now, well, here's the thing. Okay, now I want you guys to look at this move. So bishop f6. He's just focusing very directly. It's a beautiful position, right? And you have to sense that. The other thing is that it's tactical too, because white is threatening something here. You can go back to d6 and probably block with bishop f4, but given that here we are, he wanted to go to f6. But the moment that queen g3 is played, white wants something tactically. What does white want? Well, a couple of things. There are 2 threats, sort of. What are they?
Bishop takes h6, maybe.
There's bishop takes h6 idea, in addition to
F6.
using that file. What is it?
F6.
F6.
All right, Andrew, yeah, and Nikki, yeah, exactly. So both, yeah, Nikki, of course, bishop takes h6 as well. So f6 would also be pretty damn, assuming they don't have the mate threat. They can always, there's certain lines where they can play f6 and, well, even if it were exchange sack, I think white might want to do that. But here it's not even, so for example, yeah, now that the queen is leading, it wouldn't even be an exchange sack. But with the rook leading, you have to watch out for this, whether it's an exchange sack or not. In this case, it wouldn't be because they would just win the bishop. Yeah, so this is dangerous. So it's almost by necessity in the position he walked into voluntarily that we go bishop f6 because it guards g7 and it stops f6. So it's defensive, but it's attacking d4 like Uday was trying to do. Same diagonal, same thing, except it doesn't. But it does hang. No matter what, though, like I said, even if you play g6, this got loose. This would get loose immediately. So later on, it would probably fall or you have problems there. And f5 would still batter g6. This is actually a safer version. Now, that's what I'm talking about. Sort of you're not gambiting a pawn because you're getting the d pawn, but it's the sense that like you're like tossing away an h pawn. That actually happens a lot, where they'll be like, okay, go ahead, play bishop takes is very similar. Go ahead, play bishop takes h2 check. But then, and they let you take, or they even move the king to h1. You guys may have seen that sometimes. But then, and then the bishop is a little concerned. They're like, wait, I got to get out of there eventually. There's no like queen h5 and mate coming. So the bishop's eventually gonna have to move and might get trapped. And meanwhile, black would have something else going. So it's kind of like that here. It's just h6. But yeah, so you let them take h6, you take d4 with check because you determine, well, again, it's kind of, in this case, it's by necessity, but he didn't have to, of course, go bishop e7, but he's anticipating queen g3, of course. He knows that his opponent wants to do this cheapo, but now he's covering g7. There's no real follow-up for white, but he had that judgment. Well, it's just intuitive judgment that you're going to dominate the center now. And then he goes f6. So again, brilliantly done. And now he's set. There's really no way for white in the foreseeable future to increase the pressure on the king. He fixes the f, actually the f pawn is still an issue. He fixes that in place. The rooks, see, they can't really deal with black's files that he's controlling. And now he fixes this pawn in place. So rather than having the bishop guard g7, he lets the queen do that. Just don't let your queen get decoyed, which she can't. There's no one that can attack. So you can see there's just no way to attack the queen. So you know you're safe here, you're safe here. You have the files still, your central domination. So black, again, let's check the computer analysis. I assume black is much better. Computer says minus 2.6. So it's the kind of thing like we talked about earlier with, I mentioned with Uday about allowing the takes. We analyzed that. That was bad for black. In some of those lines, it was unnecessary. Yeah, one of them, I think white was winning. Everything else, black was winning, or huge advantage. With the rookie 3 stuff, well, at least huge advantage there from a human perspective. But here, so it would be easy to not, but similarly to not go into this because it looks a little scary. But when you think about it, you have to have good judgment here. Is it really that bad for black to do this and allow the pressure on g7? You gotta, it's kind of cutthroat, but you would judge it. What does white really have?
Maybe bring his rook down or something?
Like a rook lift?
Oh, no, never mind. I'm kidding.
No, he could try a rook lift.
Nah.
Well, it would be rook. It would be in the form of rook f4. Even if that happened, I guess you'd have rook f7, right? I mean, rook e7 or rook c7 even. So we'd be able to handle that. But that, in the meantime, I'm sure we have some nasty things we could do. Oh, we could go bishop e5. That's one.
Right.
We would win it. Right. We would win it. Again,
yeah.
Still nothing here. And the bishop kind of gave up his role as defender, allowed the queen to take over. And there's no attack on f6 that he has to worry about to guard. So yeah, the bishop's like, okay, I'm okay giving myself up for the rook, winning the exchange. So it's not like the kind of thing where, if the bishop was an essential defender, because he's let the queen, the pawns covered the dark squares actually, and the queen just needs to go. So anyway, that is important though. But yeah, not to mention that it would be immobilized. Immobilized.
Yeah, that's no good.
And we have the passed pawn and we have the rook coming in eventually. So yeah, that doesn't work, but it's interesting to look at that because they don't have anything. They can't challenge the e file, which is very important here. You also have, we don't need to trade anything. We have rook e4 too. So this is where our winning position is going to come about. Tactics flow from a superior position. So the bishop has nothing better to do than go back. Here comes, that's what I'm talking about right here.
Ouch.
So utter domination, right?
Yep.
Oh, well, hold on a second. There it is. So actually we were on c4, but so yeah, like I said, this is domination, but c4 was a launch pad to re-centralize to e5. So again, that's the kind of thing where like sometimes your knight might be somewhere else, like on, d5 as like, well, it's not, it is controlling, oh, it's on the center, but it gives you whatever, g5, but it can go g5 to hits h3, hits e4. So, as long as it has some influence over the center, it could do plenty of things, whether you want it on c4 or e5 or d3, something like that, hitting the queen on d3. And there it is. Oh, that's where we use c. So we use c4 again. But now, hey, may as well, just for good measure, let's toss in the rook on the, peripheral. And now we're working laterally as well. So you're going to see a lot of lateral attacks here. But this is the picture. It's a nice picture, right? To keep in your mind.
Yes.
But you're kind of, you know what I mean by kind of a gambit. He's like, go ahead, take my h-pawn. So it's a gambit of king positioning, you might say, to use the term more flexibly. So a5, bishop moves back. And I guess he could have also done that to hit the a-pawn, which he was anticipating. But as you can see, this whole queen side thing just amounts to nothing. Also, he maybe has rook b4 to get b5. It doesn't hurt, right? That's tactical as well. It brings the queen out via the queen side. So his play on the king side backfires. His play on the queen side backfires. Keep it closed. Well, by keeping it closed, you minimize his counterplay. Like we don't need the rook to open up if you take. And also it fixes the pawns in place. So a5 becomes a target. Keep improving. Now we're aiming ominously at the H pawn. It's a very weak king position. Well, actually, his position is weaker than yours. Well, these pawns are by, the king is by itself almost. You have this situation where you have two pawns in front of your king, they've been moved, but you have plenty of coverage, and white has no attack. Like I said, this whole attempt with G4 or F4, F5, maybe G4, all that stuff just fails. Doesn't do anything. That's why the bishop takes H6 thing wasn't dangerous. There was no backup, like we saw no rook F4. So bishop D2 finally gets his bishop out, and we just pin the knight. Queen C2, there's your queen B5. So this is around the time when the tactic occurs. We're getting ready for a tactic now. Oh, we are hitting the rook, by the way. So the rook has to move. There's another bishop move. I think there's been like 7 bishop moves so far, because he kept on shuffling around. Oh, remember it went to F6 too.
Mhm.
And then it went to D4, then went to C5, then it went to F8. So I think it moved it like 8 or 9 times. You have to count. Rook D1. Of course, natural maximizing move, maximize your forces. What's another move to improve your pieces a little bit more, a lot more? Nothing fancy, just a good move for your pieces. Think again, the operative word is maximize. Maximize your pieces.
We need to. Nope,
Well,
I am off today. No.
No, that's okay. You have the right idea.
Oh,
Well, you're
Lord.
looking at it.
Mm,
You're looking at that, looking at rook lifts, maximizing moves, then you just verify.
Back.
You thought it didn't work after 2 seconds. Okay,
I'm
what
gonna
else?
play today.
Huh?
I'm not playing chess today.
Well, maybe after this, and see.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so what else? So the queen's good for now. She has the diagonals. She has, she's guarding B3, and as you're seeing, she can do something else very nice later. And it's also interesting that the bishop on F8 is prophylactic too, because it's like another pawn. It's like a pawn on the back rank, right? But it's kind of, and it can move a lot. But it's almost as if you had 3 pawns here. Like imagine you lift it up once. So it's like kind of like extra pawn cover in a way, whatever it is. But the bishop's useful. It could be a knight too to cover more squares. But yeah, the bishop does a good job here. Just don't get hit on the white squares, but they don't have a light squared bishop, so it's better. Okay, what else do you have?
How about rookie too?
Yeah, right. So same idea again. You guys are
Yeah.
just piggybacking off each other, leapfrogging. So rookie two, same concept, but we pin the bishop. So first we pin the knight. We hit the rook. We pin the bishop. We safeguard our position. Oh, and by the way, they were attacking your bishop. So yeah. So you move the bishop away, safeguard, pin the bishop, hit G2. So now we're hitting G2 and H3, and the king is completely stranded other than those pawns. So you can kind of sense something is brewing up, of course. Queen C1, and now we have our grand finale. And this is the position from the book. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then when I looked back at the game, I'm like, I didn't even realize the kind of central domination he achieved, but that allowed us to kind of to reach out with our tentacles from the center. So what now?
I really want to sack the rook on G2.
Me too. I want to
You know,
sack it on
some-
H3.
Yeah, some kind of sack. Yeah. Interestingly, well, one or the other. If you take on H3, it's as if you've taken away G2, right? You punch a hole on G2 by taking H3.
Yeah, but the queen can't get in fast enough, I feel like.
So by taking on E2, well, there's Nikki's idea. So by taking on G2, you allow the queen check next. True.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, let's calculate that.
Right. So rook takes on G2, king takes, queen to E2, check. Let's see, where's the king gonna want to go? Almost certainly back to the back rank.
Only 2 moves. Yeah, 2 branches, king G1, king H1.
King H1 is bad because rook to H3 check.
And mate coming with the rook and the queen, right? So at least
Yep,
king
so-
G1. Well, it actually does get hit by a rook check too, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, that works too, actually, king G1. All right, so that's terrible.
Well, let's look at,
so
okay, so king takes wins, but he doesn't have to take it. It's less forcing. It's a capture, not a check. Rook
Yeah,
takes h3
exactly.
should be considered, because it's a capture check, should technically be considered first to be, systematic, but still, we have to find something for them. So what do they have after rook takes g2? They have to do some defensive move. What do they have? Anything decent? They're pretty limited, but they might have something.
We've got pawn takes and you've got king to g1.
After rook takes, no, I'm saying if they can refute this move, because if you know they're going to take, then you're winning.
Oh, we're still calculating that one. Sorry. I
Yeah,
thought
well,
we
yeah,
were
you should be.
looking
No, we could have even looked at this one first, but you were looking at like, okay, you delved into it like, oh, let me see. I can't bring my queen in. I want you to see your reasoning is very logical. Well, that's what I'm getting at. Your queen will get in. That's the cool. That's the trick. That's the neat thing about the puzzle. Because you're trying to. You guys both have the intentions. You have your intention. You just have to drive and make it work, right? You have to push.
at. All right, well, let's try
But
again then. So,
no, but still, yeah, technically you should have looked at this first. Like you look at both and you're like, okay, systematically, I should look at my capture check and my check. But since we're on it, let's just look at what happens just to try to refute it. Well, you want queen e2, they know that. So what do?
what about rook to e1?
Exactly, that kind of stymies you, at least it messes with you a little bit. All right. Yeah, you can't come in now.
That's a nice move.
Yeah. So at least it's, I mean, you might be winning, I don't know, but at least you don't get what you want right now. Right. And then your rook's kind of hanging. I mean, you could play like something, but then you do this and then have some obstruction, like, they have stuff, because
there's
it's
counter
probably
Knight
losing.
D3, right?
Might be losing, but it's messy. What's that?
Sorry, I thought Knight D3 was a fork, but it's guarded.
Right. It's very feeble. No, it's winning too, because you didn't even sacrifice anything then. You haven't sacked anything, but you're not mating. That's the only thing. Like, yeah, you're winning, but let's take a mate. I'll take a mate over that. So now we look at, okay, so now we calculate the other move. The most forcing move, of course. Always look at your checks first. That's fine though. We happen to, because again, you were just looking at, you were looking at it more from conceptually. Then we also look at it kind of in a serial manner. Check. Okay. So take h3, what happens now? So again, we're punching a hole in g2, effectively as if we took the g2 pawn, when the pawn takes back. Then what?
So if
How do you
king
get,
moves,
again, you want to get your queen in there. How do you do
yeah,
it?
if king plays to g1, then rook takes on g2, and we're back in the other line.
Wait, are we? King, because the rook's hanging on h3 now.
Right, but if king goes to g1 to get out of check, then rook takes on g2. You can sack the rook that way.
I know it's not the
and get
exact
queen in.
same. It's not the same line though, is it? I think it's a little different because the rook's on h3 already hanging.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything left to defend against, right? So rook takes h3, king to g1, rook takes g2, check. If king takes, then I see. It's hanging.
The rook's,
after
yeah,
queen
he's trying to
g2.
take right away. I think in the other line, the rook is
yeah.
probably here, right?
No, you're right.
So
the rook
it
is
does make a
okay.
difference. It's like trying to do a ladder mate and you have to swing your rook away, it's kind of like that. So you don't want your rook there in this case to be as quick as possible, as efficient. So yeah, it might make a difference. But we need to, okay, right now your rook is basically maximized. He's doing what he needs to do to cover, to create the mating effect. Interestingly, we also have knight f3, but there's a defense on h2, which is bishop f4, I think. So that also doesn't quite work. It's tempting, that's what I looked at first. I think first time I tried to solve it, because you got like the hook mate thing going, but then bishop f4. So there's a defense there too. There's another move though, which has 0 defense, just nothing to do, silence once you make the move. What do you think it is? And it's the kind of thing where sometimes you have to mix it up, like mix up your tempo. Sometimes you do a super forcing move followed by a quiet move. And sometimes those are the hardest to solve, where a quiet move followed by a forcing move, like a prophylactic move that wins. Interesting. Look at that Van Forest game though today. That's a crazy game. I don't know if he ended up winning. He kind of blew his attack, but he had a nice initiative. No, he ended up going into a good end game. He was down in exchange for the pawn again. But yeah, check out the Van Forest game from today. But there was a moment where he has to play king h2 first before doing a rook lift. And then he has to play a3. So first he has to go king h2, then he has to go a3, then he wins. It's insane. And then he has to, even after that, it's nebulous. But anyway, so rook takes h3 check, pawn takes. What is your move, guys? Visualize that position after pawn takes h3.
Oh, we're doing pawn takes now. Okay.
Right, because right.
King g2 is complicated.
But yeah, I think if you can take for free, it's not too bad either. Oh, then you probably go rook g3. That might be your move then. And then you're collapsing g2. That's probably pretty much done. And you haven't.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I think that's all you do. But that's a little less technical, or more technical, maybe. But that's just, you're up a pawn and you're about to mate. That's good enough. But we're looking at if you actually, the main line is the sack line, but that's certainly a sideline to consider too. But we're good with that. So if pawn takes, that's your main line. What do you do now? Visualize exactly where the pawn is. The rook's gone from b3. Pawn's gone, and therefore the weaknesses.
This is an Arabian mate. All right, so what if you take on h3? And then g takes. And oh, I just lost it. Crap.
You were trying to
I
do
wanna
you were trying to do this?
Yeah, I want to put the knight on f3. Let's see. I want to get the queen in. Oh, right. So take on h3.
Seems that
Yeah,
that's
take on
the-
take on h3. Pawn takes. Then I want to play rook to h2 check.
Oh, I see. Again, that king starts walking out a little bit. That might help them.
Yeah, and then I
You
can.
know,
bring
you have
the
like a queen
to
h2 check, queen e2 check. Then they have like king g3. No, then you have queen f3 check. They go back, but now you don't have knight f3 check because your queen's not f3, right? No, you have queen f2 check. I don't know. It's crazy. King back, knight comes in, then you still might have bishop f. They still might have bishop f4 to cover it. I don't know. That still looks good to me, but it might wiggle out a little bit.
Yeah.
No, maybe even after queen e2 check. Maybe king h1. No, then knight f3, then bishop f4 covering h2 again. It's crazy. There are some weird defenses. Could be very defensive, and you're thinking to solve this. Defensive for your opponent.
Okay.
Oh, maybe that still works actually. Right. So what about rook takes h3, g takes h3, knight to f3, setting up the Arabian mate? Just forget the queen. Right. And now
That's the
rook
one
to
where they have
h-
bishop f4. I don't know. It seems like at least again, it might stymie or attack a little bit.
but now I can bring the queen
It
into
does
e2.
cover h2. What's that? And then do we
Oh,
have
but if I bring the queen into e2 now,
the rooks. Oh, this line, the rook's on e2. Where does the queen go? You have to
Yeah.
find the trick here is to find the way to decisively infiltrate with your queen without going to e2. That's the catch.
She has to go to
You can't
E8.
do it by sacking on h2, probably. You can't, even if you get to e2, it doesn't work. You have to find, in other words, you have to find another way.
Mm.
So you have to be
It's gonna
stubborn
say
about it.
E8,
Like, but you
it's
have to
just-
look at that. That's good that you looked at it. Like, that's how naturally these things come about. You
Dang.
look at the main line as you're doing, you look at the main ideas, like how do I get into e2 to have Arabian mate? Like, okay, none of that stuff works. There's a glitch in each line. So let's try to fix that glitch in some creative way. That's generally how we find creative moves, because by necessity, nothing else works.
D7?
What's that?
D7?
What's e7?
No,
Is it-
never mind. I'm off my game
No,
today.
just throw it out there. Yeah, process elimination. Well, no, that doesn't work, I guess, if you don't.
E8.
work.
I'm just looking.
Oh, queen e8.
Yeah.
No,
just
actually, that's
looking.
very interesting. Why is queen e8 interesting? I don't know if it works, but it's
It's
not
slow
the
as-
exact, it's not the
no.
move that he played, but it
No.
almost works for what it might work for what reason.
She can hop up until
But
like
again, we're getting closer and closer to the truth of this position
Mm.
with queen e8, because where are you going next?
H5.
Oh, there's that. There's another way. There's that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I've actually looked at that with someone before. Yeah, I've looked at this line. Queen h5 / where else can the queen go from e8? The knight's.
Oh
Wait,
yeah, the knight's gone. Whoopsie.
Oh, no, it's not gone in this line. No, it's not
Oh, no,
gone.
no, you're
So it
right.
would be queen e8 to h5. If it can get to e4, though, that's interesting. But then they'd have queen b1 or queen c2. so you
Yeah,
still
you
couldn't
get
get to
out of
e4
there.
anyway. But yeah, but even if you go, okay, we'd have to look at, but it's slow. It is a little slow.
Yeah,
We
that's
could,
a
like I
little-
said, the hint is it's a quiet move. This is sort of quiet. But then
So
but since it's slower, they have time to cover h3
Mhm.
possibly.
Okay, would this be a slower move? Say you move the, what is it, A, B, C, D, the D5 pawn, you move it up one. That way you have that area, you have the D. the
That's the quiet move. That's the quiet
Yeah.
move. That's-
Nice.
do you guys see it now?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
The
savage.
That's beautiful, right?
Nice.
It's
That's
the
really cool.
concept of, so you punch the hole in G2 again, you imagine this diagonal. That's the key idea.
Oh man.
We've opened up both lines laterally, and you dominate this file. That's untouchable. And this is untouchable. And like we said, queen e4, there are moves the queen can make. There are no moves. Well, there's your beautiful knight there. She can't go to
Mhm.
c4 now. So you're just gonna go queen d5. Well, you happen to fork that too to boot. But yeah, we don't care about that. We're going for the mates, unstoppable. Well, then there's, wait a second. No, that's a smothered, well, kind of a block.
Yeah, it's gross.
That's nice, right? It's a beautiful.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's under the, like I said, it's under the clearance section. Now, sometimes you clear it violently, like, you know, you'll like throw a queen away or something to open up something else. But in this case, you toss a pawn away quietly, just a little advance of the pawn, and he resigns because there's no defense. So all that came up, but there you go again, central control. Now it just happened that your pawn, which was nicely controlling the center, was in your way. So you use the control of the next square that you had, which you were previously occupying a utter, you know, complete control over, push the pawn, you still have all those squares, and then you use that total control again, not only of d5 and e4, but beyond, because of those, because the weakened king side, the fact that the f pawns moved, which often gets them in trouble. Actually, it's not just that it's not just the diagonal. When you move the f pawn, you also weaken the second rank or seventh rank. And also you don't have f3 to blunt any diagonal stuff. So you see the f4, you can do it obviously in many cases, but you just have to know that f4 has additional weaknesses. So if you see your opponent do it, try to exploit them, you know, just as he did. Well, maybe you don't always get to play this move, but you know, these types of geometrically like that. That's nice, right?
That's a great one.
Yeah, so
I like that
follows
you
this flow.
Pulled that from a puzzle, like you found the game, like that's really neat too.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times. I used it before with my students, like several times. It's like, this is such a, no, I didn't even know, because the puzzle starts from the sack. The puzzle is right here. You have to find this move and then this move. So it's like a 3-mover basically, 1, 2, and then queen moves and then mates. Yeah, but I just looked it up from there and I didn't even realize, and I looked at it, I'm like, whoa, I flipped it again, like, this is awesome. Central control. It's very rare. No, and I looked it up actually, so there's some YouTube videos on this too, because people who've found the game. It's probably like something that's famous in the Soviet school or something that they, you know, famous Botvinnik game. It was a USSR championship, I think. Yeah, so of course in the Soviet school they would know about it. But now we are and Soltis was a big American author who brought a lot of Soviet ideas like into the American school, I guess you'd say, or internationally. That's also, interestingly, this book, Chess Tactics for the Tournament Player, also happens to be, well, Kasparov said on this, like, bringing ideas from the Soviet school. So yeah, we could take that, at least since they were so obsessed. They were obsessed with chess and they had a lot to contribute. So yeah, at least in that sense, we could learn from it. Oh, okay, see you, Xander. All right, so as for the other ones, I don't know how much time I have today, but why don't I just flip through it? You guys can look at it yourself. I'm going to send you the link, actually.
Okay.
I'm going to send you a link to the study. Okay. Is that everyone? Yeah. So you have the study link that has the 3. I'll try to I never really get around to doing more analysis. I've done that on a few of the studies, like deep analysis of the games. But yeah, it's kind of, you look at it, it's self-explanatory in a way, you just see how he controls the center. So I'll just flip through these. You guys can look at them yourselves. But so they each have their own thing. The first one was sort of quiet. No really overtures in terms of taking over the center early on. But then, you know, there's some weaknesses, self-imposed weaknesses created by White, by Stolberg, and then Botvinnik just sort of starts coming in. And then the key idea, though, that really clinched it was when he sacked the H, well, he gave up the H pawn for the D pawn. And that's the kind of thing you can often do. Like, no one's just going to give you the D pawn, you know, all else being equal. But you say, you know what, I understand it more deeply. I'm willing to give up that H pawn. I understand that I'm safe enough defensively. And obviously I want to take your D pawn. But so it's because of that. It's because of your deeper understanding, right? Does that make sense? Of course, it is deeper understanding, but that allows you to take this kind of risk, you know, to allow something that looks kind of scary. But there are a lot of cases where, for example, bishop takes h6, there's like knight h5. And it's like, okay, if you take my knight, I take your bishop or something, or you just ignore it, at least you'll hold them off. And then the queen can't mate on g7. You do something else while she's busy. And if she does take h5, if you want to, she's broken the pins, then you could take the bishop on h6. So there is stuff like that. Does that make sense in principle?
Yes.
You guys have any questions? And that'll be the main one, I guess, that we'll look at. But let me know if you guys have any thoughts about that one. But that was about, yes, that was a quieter in a way. And then he took over slowly. Now this one is a hyper modern game. I actually pulled this from the other study on hyper modern game that we looked at once. So it's just ready opening, right? Provoking this advance. So this is a situation, kind of like we've seen it with the French as well, where you provoke your opponent to overextend, arguably overextend their center. You have to prove it's overextended. And now you don't play A3. You guys may have seen this, remember? A3, A4.
Mhm.
If you push, he takes on passant. He messes up the fluidity of your pawns. So now you get it going. Kick the knight out of the center. Then you just strike. Since the knight's left, you have more control over D4, so you make him take. So basically, black took over center kind of prematurely. It's pretty ambitious. Even if white does it, it could be dangerous. But since black's down a tempo, it's pretty hard to achieve this. Now you have the knight maneuver, which helped with B4, and it hits D4. And then there you go. This is like the narrative of it. You hit him with E3, they have to give up the D4 square. At least the pawn there. We have beautiful centralization. Now they just have the E5 pawn. So now there's a pretty cool way of hitting this. We trade and then we create this knight. It happens in the ready system a lot. You'll do like rook C1 to C2, and then the A file wouldn't be open in those cases. Usually, it could be actually. You could take then go there, but usually it's like not even open yet. You do so you move your rook out of the way. Then you go queen A1. Then you like double in the C file and take D5 and stuff like that. So yeah, this is pretty cool though. So we've removed one pawn. Operation remove the D pawn. Now it's operation destroy the E pawn. And he just hangs it. He actually just hangs it. Okay, operation successful. Mission achieved. Mission accomplished. There you go. And then he's going to crush him now. But he's going to occupy more center. Well, he's using his influence through the center scope. But did he have to give him? I guess he just didn't really have many good ways to hold it. I mean, naturally, queen E7 or E6 comes to mind. He just didn't want to deal with it or something. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure why he hung the pawn. Let's see. Computer says you should take D3, but even then, white's a little better, say, just to get a sense. And then he sack. Oh, it's not a sack. He hits the queen. Queen moves. Hits the bishop. So if he takes the knight, he can take the bishop. If the bishop moves somewhere, I'm not really sure where it wants to go over there. Then you play B6 and you make the queen go back to defend the bishop. Then you just simply retreat. But then you have something very similar, actually, where you've destroyed the E pawn also. So yeah, just to give you guys a sense, but he gives it up. So either way, we're destroying their center. He's playing against the C file. When that allows him to get the knight, even though you want to take with the rook, it doesn't do anything when the queen moves. So you get the D5 square. You occupy the center with the pawn. You're
Yeah,
aiming.
that'd be a common mistake I would do. I would take with the rook.
It's tempting, right? But it
Yeah.
turns out it's probably not that bad. But then D3 is weak once the queen moves.
Right. So it's a good little.
Although
lesson.
no, it is very tempting. But it's all about the knight coming in
Right.
this. And then the rook opens again. And if he doesn't take, your knight looks beautiful on D5. When he does take, your pawn's happy there. Half pawn. You can always guard it with your bishop and move the knight. And then you're dominating. And look at that. There's your domination again. Controlling all. Basically, well, we're occupying 3 squares. Bishop aims through E4, covers D5. And then we end up using this to launch forward with a knight. And we turn this into a mating attack. And he mates. Double check, 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 check.
Oh my.
And then he's going to go mate him. And he gets mated in 2 moves. A queen C7 to B7 is coming. So yeah, just to give you again, you guys can flip through it yourselves.
Yeah.
You can look at it more now. We'll get him some more apples. Okay. And then this one's the Nimzovitsch game, which he covers in my system. Of course, he likes to cover a lot of his own games. Oh, but as you said, Nikki, okay, I'll cover some more of mine too, but at least in terms of lessons learned. But yeah, some people, the authors, they just want to cover their own games and show how cool they are, or
Right.
how brilliant they are. We have another capture in the center. Oh, good. Go get one. Your mom will get it for you. Go ask her. Okay, so this is another situation. So the second was a little more subtle, taking over squares, eating the D pawn, pushing in an interesting way. Oh, that was the first one, rather. The second one was kind of more hyper modern, also provoking the advances and then hitting the center directly. This one is about taking over the center with your pawns. And the way we do, I want you guys just to guess one move here. So we actually go queenside because we're going to play aggressively in the center. So you have to open up your king. We'll see why. You probably could have gone kingside, but nice prophylactic move if you castle queenside since it's kind of open. More in the center, C file, half open so you want to get out of there. Maybe play rook C1 if you need to. H3, keep the pieces out, I guess. And then here's an idea. Oh, let me take it out. That's actually, no, he didn't play F4. Not bad either. It'd be nice if he had a knight and F3 to come in, but no, he didn't do that. That's often a thing to do. But in this case, I want you guys just to find this idea. How do you play in the center here? What's a good way? Kind of common in like these Nimzo, it could come out of Nimzo Indians, where you have this set up.
F4, F3.
F3, exactly, because then you prepare E4. And you'll see this, it's a Nimzo Indian system where you go, you know, the one where white goes E3 and then knight G2. So white will have the same setup, and then knight, I guess that's where and then they'll take, and the bishop will retreat to E7. So it's very similar in a lot of ways, although it would be this different pawn, I think, but very similar concept in Nimzo India. Is a famous game on Alekhine, I think Alekhine versus Capablanca, where he beats him. If I recall, those are the players. F3, I think it's an Alekhine game. Yeah. F3, E4, then it gets E5 in, and yeah, it's bad. But this is the same thing, same concept in the center. F3, okay, he throws an A3. I'm not sure why he needs A3. Yeah, I don't understand that move, but he inserts this move for some reason, and then he takes on F6. Now you have a target on F6, I guess, to push your pawn, but you also remove one of the pieces. And some decisions he made, probably doesn't need to. Oh yeah, but the knight is if the knight moves, you have to watch out. It's a little loose, so he just takes it. He's going to dominate with his knights over the bishops, and he's going to use that as a target when he advances. So he's actually, in this case, you're keeping the center locked. We're kind of going beyond the center. And again, a little peripheral to the center on the F5, right?
Nice.
Now, in this case, F4, F5 works. But keep in mind, his king's not there. His king's a little open, but again, you have to think about who can reach my king. And I'm getting, although black does get a little play over here, but it's not in time. Now you have the play through the center. Well, not only that, see, we have locked the center, but that doesn't mean that it has to stay locked, because we're going to sack our knight and he lets B4 happen. It's kind of crazy. It's very similar, actually, similar themes. You let him attack you a little bit, but this is also tempo play. This is if you're like attacking his king on the king side versus queen side. It's a lot of tempo play. You have to reach him first. But now, again, destroy the center, full occupation of the center, right? Of course, I looked at the Nimzovitsch games, and in the pictures, I'm like, okay, which one shows the most domination? Probably this one. Of all the games. Now, a lot of them are like looking through the center, things like that. But this one is, again, domination through advances with the pawns, preparing those advances. And then once you do the piece sack, you're occupying it more. Actually, it's not a full piece sack, because you're going to get into the fork. So you're actually giving up, you're getting the 2 pawns here, and you're giving up the 2 pieces for the rook. But also that kills his attack to a large degree, because that's kind of scary with the rook coming in. So you're like, okay, fine, you're probably going to get A3 in many cases, but you don't really have time. So yeah, he just got the 2. It's a very good situation for the rook against the 2 bishops. The king's in the center, and the pawns are coming, and you've gone beyond. You're controlling the behind it and the top 2 squares of the center, and encroaching on your opponent's territory and going beyond. This is an example where you're using the center like as a pawn roller, because you're controlling it and beyond through your sack, through your advances, and ultimately through the sack. It's kind of like, remember the last game when you took D4, you removed that pawn. And again, kind of gambit of your H pawn, not a full pawn, but it's as if you gave away that pawn, which was important. Here, you're sacking you're giving up the knight for the 2, you end up giving up the rook for 2 pieces. You get the pawns, but also you are letting him do some stuff on A3. But this is more about the tempos, right? Because these pawns are steamrolling quickly. And you're getting E6, you're getting E6. Oh, there's nice king. Nice to have the king on B1, get out of action, allow rook C1. And again, yeah, his king, similarly, it's kind of open, but it's kind of weakened, but nobody's reaching the white king. It's about, can you attack the weaknesses? And then we have this nice T6 advance, and they actually can't trade. Interesting line. You just dominate the center here with the open files, and she has to take, and then you're going to win the bishop because almost getting mated. So you have to stave off mate. Now you're up in exchange and some pawns. So yeah, well, a pawn currently. No pawns. And something like this, So you're up like 4 points. Easy win. Just push the A pawn and stuff. Bring the rook into E7 and whatnot. So E7 check. That looks uncomfortable. Queen D5. Now he's attacking the bishop, threatening mate. Queen takes b5 mate. No, it wouldn't be mate because the king would take, but it looks bad. Bishop takes f1. No, it's a queen. Well, now he doesn't cover c6, and now it's mate on c6. So going directly through this, it reminds me of that game by Le Bourdonnais, where he pushes the 3 pawns through the center. You guys remember that game with the 3 pawns make it to the 7th? In that case, he's going like for a queen and a back rank mate and whatnot. He ends up getting an extra queen and stuff. But in this case, it's using the central pawn, steamroll him and reach the king, mating him in the center. Pretty nice, huh?
That's a great one.
Oh, nice. So you guys have any thoughts about that one? That's the final one. You can check them out.
Gotta be real brave.
What's that?
You gotta be real brave in that.
Yeah, you do. And that's often, and again, it's kind of like the notion of a gambit. I guess that's kind of the theme in a way. It's kind of like a different kind of gambit. You're gambiting it's one imbalance it's exchange of imbalances, but it's like in a gambit of a pawn, you're giving up a pawn for another imbalance to gain something that's positive for you, such as development, or maybe throw away a pawn to damage their, double their e-pawns, damage, get into g6, get to their king, damage their structure, long-term advantages from that as well as dynamic ones. In this case, you're giving up, you're kind of gambiting ostensibly your king's safety, but it doesn't matter because you understand, obviously you're not going to really expose your king too much unless you have a really good reason. But in this case, yeah, he does get a little exposed, especially in the other, a little bit, but after f6 in that game, it's not really exposed. You just have, again, to the untrained eye, it looks scary, right? But you have to, you would call them cold-blooded moves when you make moves that like expose your king somewhat, right? If you walk your king out, it's like, you go into an end game where you're like, there are queens roaming the board, you move your king up, you like avoid the perpetual check, and your king supports the queening of the pawn or something. So you have to be, it's about precision there and being fearless, just objective, what works. But yeah, in this case, there really was nothing. It looked a little scary for a moment, but the key is that once he sacked, he got rid of the rook. Getting rid of the rook's very important, because that would have been a little scary with the rook opening up. What's that?
Yeah, I was just saying, like, after the knight move, like that would be totally comfortable. Well, not comfortable, but like I would feel happy.
Which knight move here?
Yeah, that.
Right, but yeah, especially since you get rid of the rook. I think if you don't get rid of the rook, because he did have some, let's say you didn't take it, like the way it went, the way this kind of play, it's not like white had him right away.
Right.
So black had some time, but the time that he had now is not enough to orchestrate some kind of a mating attack. And then, yeah, I'd be curious whether if black tried something here, but I guess it's like, well, let's say, for example, he takes on a3. I wonder, I'll just quickly look at the computer, but just to get, since I have to run, but it says that's actually the best move, it says. But then, well, you block the bishop out, so there's no real threats like to cover a3 anymore. Okay, so he gets to move. You probably move the other pawn soon. Okay, here's what it says, just to give you a sense. The bishop's, wait, if it takes, no, it's covered. So he just traps the bishop, take it. And then you can play e6 soon, I'm sure. Wonder if you can get away with it now, probably wouldn't hurt. Looks kind of cool if it works. That's not necessary, I guess, but there's nothing direct. But yeah, you just have these beautiful pawns and you can push them at will. And saying, rook lift, so just some sample line, get the rooks out there, use the power of your rooks and swing around, and something good's going to happen. I'm sure that would be good. Something good's going to happen very soon. Let's go check. Say it goes here. We have, oh, that's nice. We have a sack trying to push our pawns, undermining it with rook queen check in the corner too. But then you get this check. And if the pawn takes, then we have, what do we have? Queen check and check or something? Queen check and then another check maybe. And then what else do we have? Like another check, and it's a mate in two. It's kind of like in the game, you reach him from in the game, you got him this way. Yeah, that's stuff. Anyway, just a sample that you have. It just shows you kind of have to neutralize them. Just be careful, do the rook lift. Nothing much going on. But yeah, so you would just the idea is you play d6 and you shut out the bishops, so there's no real attack. The bishops are totally overwhelmed by the pawns, rooks, the queen's roaming. Yeah. So it's just, so every single one is like a different version of central domination. So you have some patterns you can use. Then you just have to say, all right, I know my patterns. Now I have to figure out which one to go for in this game and be stubborn, make it work, and figure out what my opponent's counterplay is, like those dynamic lines, and shut them down, right? And then you have to know, like here, do I need to respond directly or not? In this case, he didn't respond directly. He responded, well, his pushing of his pawns was so strong. That was the response in itself. The initiative he got from that shut down the bishop. So there was no counterplay, and taking the rook stopped the rook counter. So yeah, you guys have any questions?
Nope. just want to thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are some fun games.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. I'm like, yeah, it's such a fundamental theme. You can't go into that enough. It's like, because again, we know, like, obviously you should control the center, start moving your pawns, d4, e4, stuff like that. But then the whole game matters. Even in the end game, we'll bring in your king to the center. So that's
Right.
like King of the Hill, right? King of the Hill, you want to push this pawn, get enough
Yeah.
control over essentials. King of the Hill is actually great because you need to get that pocket, and you get that foothold in the center that enables you often dynamically through clearances, and your king comes in. Now, in that case, it's more fleeting. It may not hold that in a real game, but at least you temporarily gain it there. But in the real game, you either hold it permanently, more like the first game, or you just you at least are able to use that to, like, for example, isolate a D pawn situation to ram your D pawn down the board, which is actually the best response. Now, yeah, check out those games in Tata Steel. Best response by who's playing Carlsen right now? Prognanata, yeah. Best response by Prague when I saw it. Carlsen was pressing, better knight than bishop and outpost. Then Prague kind of pushed him back, or like held him off. But then the pawn should start. His best line was he just should ram the pawn down the board, create the counterplay to actually hold on. Because Mark Carlsen was better. He kind of like took the pawn. He won a pawn with the wrong piece. And then yeah, check him out though. Check out the Carlsen game
Definitely.
and the Van Forest game. Those are against Geary. And then we have Carlsen versus Prognanata. Those are really great games. So I'll pause it there. Great job, guys. And,
Thank you so much, David. You have a great weekend, everybody.